All right, let's dive into one of the most incredible and, frankly, impossible-sounding images in the entire Bible. This vision of a massive, glorious city that's filled with light, but it has no sun and no moon.
So you gotta ask, right? How is that even possible? I mean, where would that light come from? What could ever replace the very things that have defined light and life for all of history? It sounds like something from a sci-fi movie, but the answer is deeply theological, and honestly, it's pretty mind-blowing.
And the source of this whole mystery is right here, in the book of Revelation. We learn the city is the New Jerusalem, and its power source isn't some star or fusion reactor, it's divine. This isn't just flowery language, it's the incredible finale to a story that started thousands of years earlier. To really get what's happening in this future city, we actually have to hit the rewind button and go way back to the Old Testament, where the prophet Isaiah first introduced this crazy idea. See, for John, who wrote Revelation, this wasn't a brand new concept. It was the fulfillment of a promise made long ago.
I mean, listen to this. Hundreds of years before Revelation was even a thought, Isaiah prophesied about a time when God's people wouldn't need created light anymore. The Lord himself would be their everlasting light. What a promise. But it raises a huge question. What on earth could happen to make the sun and the moon totally obsolete?
What kind of event could be so powerful, so reality-bending, that it could just rewrite the rules of light for all of eternity? The Bible points to one single dramatic moment that changed absolutely everything.
You know, the path from Isaiah's prophecy to Revelation's fulfillment isn't some long, winding road. It actually passes through one specific afternoon, a moment of unbelievable darkness that paradoxically gave birth to an eternal life.
Yeah, it all comes down to the cross. Calvary. The crucifixion isn't just some event in a history book. In this story, it's a cosmic turning point. It's the moment where the very definition of light and glory gets completely redefined.
And get this, the Bible itself tells us that right at the peak of the crucifixion, the sun, the most powerful source of light we know, it just went out. It was as if creation itself couldn't bear to look as the sin of the world was placed on its own creator. This wasn't a random eclipse, no. This was a sign.
Okay, so let's break down the spiritual logic here. The idea is that when Jesus took on the judgment for all sin, the created light of the sun, which is a symbol of God's perfect righteousness, had to be extinguished for a time. That moment of darkness was actually necessary for the work of atonement to be finished, which then cleared the way for a brand new, uncreated light.
Now, before we jump back to Revelation to see the big payoff, we need to quickly talk about symbolism. Because in this biblical narrative, the sun and moon aren't just a star and a rock. They stand for something much, much bigger.
Think of it like this. The sun represents the direct, pure, unfiltered glory and righteousness of God. It generates its own light. But the moon? The moon has no light of its own, right? It only reflects the sun. It's a perfect symbol for our human attempts to reflect God's light. Through religion, the law, our own good efforts. It's always imperfect, always secondhand.
And when you understand that, what happened at Calvary makes so much more sense. The sun went dark because judgment was being poured out. And you see prophecies about the moon turning to blood, symbolizing that real redemption could only come through the blood of the atonement. The message was unmistakable. Both God's natural light and our reflected human attempts at light just weren't enough. Something totally new was required.
And that, right there, brings us full circle. We're back in that amazing city in Revelation where we get to see Isaiah's ancient prophecy finally come true in the most spectacular way.
Remember that wild promise from Isaiah? The one that said a day was coming when the Lord himself would just replace the sun? I mean, what an audacious, seemingly impossible thing to claim. And then, centuries later, here it is. The fulfillment. The glory of God is the city's illumination, and the Lamb, Jesus Christ, is the very lamp that radiates that glory. The promise made way back in Isaiah finds its perfect completion in the person of the Lamb. But you know what? We can go even deeper. This is where it gets really cool, because the original Greek language John used to write this adds a layer of meaning that you can sometimes miss in the translation. The Greek word John uses for light here is leknos. Now, this doesn't just mean a generic glow or some kind of ambient light. It means lamp. It's a specific, focused, identifiable source. So the light of the city isn't just everywhere. It's shining from a single point, the lamp. And who is the lamp? The text says it's the arnion.
This is a very specific word for lamb used over and over in Revelation. It carries this sense of sacrificial innocence, but in the context of Revelation, it's also loaded with the meaning of his ultimate, triumphant victory. He's both the sacrifice and the king.
And of course, this all clicks perfectly with what Jesus said about himself, doesn't it? He didn't just say he would bring light. He flat out said, "I am the light." And that claim finds its ultimate, eternal expression right here, in the New Jerusalem, where he is the city's one and only lamp.
So here's the absolute crucial takeaway, the central point of this whole thing. The light of this impossible city isn't just some random miracle. It is a direct result of the cross. The eternal power source for the New Jerusalem is the finished work of redemption. The darkness of Calvary literally purchased the eternal light of glory.
So let's just recap what this new reality looks like. In the New Jerusalem, the sun and moon are basically retired. They're obsolete. Why? Because the very darkness of sin that they exposed is gone, forever. Instead, the glory of God is the atmosphere, the very illumination of the place, and the Lamb himself is the lamp, personally and eternally radiating that perfect, glorious light. Which leaves us with this one kind of mind-blowing thought to chew on. If the ultimate endgame is a creation that doesn't even need a sun anymore because it runs on the direct, unfiltered glory of its Redeemer, what does that tell us about how total and complete that redemption really is? It's a reality where God isn't just the one who made the light, he is the light.